Welcome back to Tropical Freeze Minimum Bananas. The reaction to the last video was mostly positive, so I've officially decided to go through with this project and route every single level in the game. If you haven't watched that video, go ahead and check it out with the link in the description below. There I explain the rules and introduce many of the mechanics important to banana dodging. As for today, we're looking at the second world in the game, Autumn Heights. And stick around, because I managed to complete what is undoubtedly a world's first and by far the most impressive and difficult challenge I've done for this channel. No sense in wasting any more time on an intro, let's do this. Windmill Hills is up first, an absolutely gorgeous and extremely fun level. After smacking these tree trunks out of the way to avoid some bananas, the start of the level is super simple. Try and keep Dixie Kong for as long as possible. She's super useful and almost essential for certain parts. I was worried about this barrel section, but by timing your shot perfectly, you can squeeze through all the bananas and reach the first checkpoint with 0. We're then presented with a similar obstacle to Busted Bayou's opening, but since we have some ledges and enemies to work with, it's a lot less of an issue. After that, we get a fairly tricky tower section with a bunch of bananas and a barrel at the top. Reaching that barrel isn't too bad, just jump on the edges of every platform and choose an efficient route. Once you get up to this top gear, you can actually roll to skip the first barrel entirely. We do collect 9 unavoidable bananas immediately after, and this is notable for being the first unavoidable banana bunch we've encountered. These give 5 bananas, so we want to try and avoid these even more than singles, something that will come up later in the world. We then get a long stretch of basic platforming before reaching this spot where we can skip a ton of bananas using a green balloon. It can be pretty awkward since you can't see, but thankfully while holding the balloon you're unable to grab collectibles. Very shortly after that are 6 more required bananas and the end of the level, bringing the total for Windmill Hills to 15. Honestly, a really solid level to start with. Hey, what's that thing that popped up at the bottom? Oh, it's our global banana counter telling us exactly how many bananas have been collected for this world. I thought it'd be a lot nicer than just saying the total every time like I did before. But enough about that, let's move on to Mountain Mania. This is our first Ramby level, but lucky for us, he's not actually required here. All the breakable Ramby blocks are possible to jump over, so does that mean the level is easy? Unfortunately, no, not at all. There's a required barrel launch before the first checkpoint that gives 18 bananas, already overtaking the first level. Then we get a long stretch of easy platforming between the first and second checkpoint, followed by a really tight section where the whole level is crumbling. There's 3 super long stretches of bananas to dodge that require a perfect roll jump and hover with Dixie, and the last one is especially tough since you have to make a tight squeeze. Immediately after this section, we're confronted by another long line of bananas, but this one just doesn't seem possible to skip, unfortunately. I tried roll jumps, green balloons, and even landing in between the bananas, but I just couldn't avoid grabbing one more banana here. But the level still isn't done kicking my ass, since right after the checkpoint are 2 swinging boxes infested with bananas. These edge jumps are unbelievably precise and took me over 20 minutes, but I eventually got past and began the final section. Most of it is doable with some careful jumps and Dixie floats, but this part here seemed completely impossible without a green balloon. So I dove into the pit, floated back up to the level, and finished the stage with 19 bananas. That's not great, of course, but it's honestly not bad when you consider that 18 of them came from an unskippable barrel. Let's check out the next level. Horntop Hop is easily the most enjoyable level for minimum bananas we've seen in this game so far. The entire stage is full of bananas, but it's pretty obvious how you're supposed to dodge them all. When you boil it down, there's no weird routing puzzle or required items or anything. All it requires is skill and really solid and consistent platforming. I wish every level in the game were like this one. Unfortunately, as enjoyable as this stage is, the ending requires us to collect 2 bananas. Hug the right side of the horn as much as possible and only grab 1 banana from each of these straight lines. Once you get into the curve section, you'll have to fight the weird gravity a little bit to stay on the right side. Dixie Kong really helps if you have her, but there's no way to die once you get to this point, meaning you'll have to replay the entire stage to try again. No idea why there isn't an option to return to the last checkpoint or something, but we end off stage 3 with only 2 bananas added to the total. Next up is one of my favorite levels in the series, Sawmill Thrill. I had a feeling it wasn't going to be nearly as fun for this run though, and I was right. 1 banana is required at the start before you even enter the sawmill, and after that you'll have to make a lot of damage boosts to dodge some more. Crash guards actually aren't all that useful here. There's way more than 3 required damage boosts in the level, so you're honestly better off just collecting hearts and taking the damage directly. I'm sure we'll be needing these for later worlds anyway, so we may as well save them. This jump here is barely possible without grabbing bananas, and this jump here is just barely not possible. I reached the first checkpoint with just 2 bananas and got ready for the log part. With a combination of tiny jumps, damage boosts, and good routing, I managed to get by with only 5 more bananas. 2 right here at this part with the low ceiling, and 3 at this part that requires an enemy bounce. You'll need to manage your hearts effectively to make it through with just 5, but it's definitely doable. After somehow surviving this wood chipper, we're back in the minecart for the final section. With a super tight set of jumps, only 2 bananas are required on this platform, and we're actually in the clear for the entire saw chase afterwards. You'll have to grab the puzzle piece and damage boost 1 more time, but after that, all that's left is the final jump. There's a huge line of bananas to grab, but if we just fall off the track, we can get by with 7. 2 from the line and 5 from this banana bunch atop the owl. That brings us down to the secret exit, but we can actually climb up the side and reach the normal one too, something I totally forgot about until now. This brings Sawmill Thrill up to 16 bananas in total, which isn't too bad honestly. It wasn't fun, and getting a single run with only 16 bananas sounds like hell, but at least it's over. Alpine Incline is our first possible level in this world. Most of the stage is actually pretty simple, much like Horntop Hop, but there's still a couple of tricky spots to talk about. This barrel launch towards the start looks scary, but all you have to do is time a shot to avoid every banana. This hot air balloon section was super stressful and tight, but I managed to make it through unscathed on my first attempt. This other barrel launch is much tighter than the first, and this part immediately after is the hardest part in the video so far. Wait, what the hell happened? That came out of absolutely nowhere. By abusing Dixie Kong and these penguin bullets, I eventually dodged every banana and finished the stage with 0. This is a pretty fun one. The ending is a massive difficulty spike, but if you're up for the challenge, this is absolutely another level I'd recommend. Let's move on to the last normal level, Wingding. I was worried I was in for a harder version of Zipline Shrine when I started this level, but it's actually a slightly easier version. Emphasis on slightly, this still took almost 2 hours. So far, 3 inventory items has always been just barely enough to get us through levels, but for once, 3 green balloons just isn't gonna cut it. We'll have to find the best places to use them and avoid the most bananas we can, which is a very difficult routing puzzle. I was able to get the grand total down to just 2 bananas, and here's how. Jump over this first row of bananas and collect 1 banana in this row. A green balloon could obviously skip this, but we're gonna need all 3 of them for later. Now you get a bit of a break and just have to do some basic platforming until reaching the next set of zip lines. Damage boost through this owl and use your first balloon to float up and ring these bells. After that, you'll have to make some super tight jumps to dodge these bananas, and after that, you'll have to collect the second and final banana of the level to get past this zip line. Finally, for this section, use your second green balloon at this spot, and then get ready for the final part. For this tower portion, you'll have to jump up the ramp and roll down the platforms to avoid bananas, and the rest is pretty easy. The last zipline section starts out easy enough, but after using your final green balloon, you'll have to make some super tight jumps to avoid the rest of the bananas and crash into the ending of the level. Whew, that was a lot, but a score of only 2 bananas is pretty good considering how much work it took. With the normal levels complete, all we have left to look at are the 2 secret stages, the cave stage, and a boss fight. Unlike last time, the boss fight isn't too bad here. It's still a lot tougher than normal and took around a half hour, but compared to Big Top Bop, this is an absolute breeze. There are many reasons for this, but the big one is that these bananas actually do despawn if given enough time. Combine that with the arena changing every 3 hits, and you've got a pretty clear battleground for a majority of the fight. On top of that, we have a lot more freedom on when and where we hit the boss, and with good strategy, you'll barely have to worry about bananas. These smaller birds are the only thing making this boss significantly harder than normal, but they still aren't too bad to manage. 0 bananas. That wraps up the main levels for this world, so let's look at Crumble Cavern. I thought I was in big trouble at first since there's so many barrel launches in this stage, but much to my surprise, this level barely took an hour to route. Reaching the first checkpoint is an absolute breeze and doesn't give me much to talk about aside from this super long fall at the start. Even after the first checkpoint, all you have to do is some basic platforming until you reach this barrel section. Since we need to go into the background, our green balloons are worthless, adding 10 bananas to the total. However, this other line of bananas can be skipped with a really precise shot, and after that, we've reached our last checkpoint. The whole cave starts to crumble, but there's still 2 super tricky shots to make and 1 unavoidable line of bananas to grab. I tried to skip the ladder with a green balloon, but I just couldn't get enough height, adding 12 more bananas to the total. But back to those tricky shots. The first is right here above the letter N, and the second launches you off screen into a barrel we aren't supposed to access until later. If you can time it right, that finishes off the level. It's a pretty funny finale circling the entire stalagmite without doing anything, but it's definitely the easiest part of the level. 22 bananas were required here, which is the most in this world, but also a lot lower than I was expecting from this stage. Let's move on to the next level. Rodent Ruckus is the first rocket barrel level in Tropical Freeze, and it's a pretty easy stage to beat without bananas. Some tight squeezes are required towards the start, but by the time you reach the first checkpoint, you should be good as long as you stay away from the middle of the screen. I honestly don't have much to say about this level. Much like Horntop Bop and Alpine Incline, this stage just requires skill and nothing more. There's a little memorization, I suppose, but aside from that, it's a cinch. Our grand total sits at 76 with just 1 more level to go, Bopopolis. My commentary is pretty awful since I was recording early and hadn't woken up yet, so I'm just going to commentate over the gameplay instead. Please enjoy. So this is my successful run of Bopopolis with no bananas. You may be able to hear my voice in the background because I did live commentate this gameplay, but I did not do a very good job of it because I was super tired and it was very early in the morning. These jumps are really, really hard. Thank God they're towards the start. If that were at the end, I'd be miserable. This jump is really hard too because you gotta wait for the platform to lower to dodge that banana bunch. I was actually able to get it a couple of times without waiting for the platform to lower, but it was way too inconsistent, so I just land on the edge there and then just do some standard enemy bounces after this. Honestly, this whole level, I think the hardest part was just routing it because it seemed so impossible on paper, and yeah, that's my favorite jump in the level. And I got it really, really well on my successful run, which I'm really happy about. I thought I was going to take damage, because that's what I usually do at that part, but I managed to avoid it here, which is awesome. And then this is probably the second or third hardest jump right there. You can't land to the left of the barrel. You have to get directly under it without going into it, because otherwise you won't get enough distance to land on that platform without grabbing bananas. The hard part is over, but we have still some interesting stuff to talk about. A lot of barrels are actually safe, like that one. You just kind of have to memorize which ones are okay and which ones aren't. I think you can actually skip most of the barrels even without the banana lines, but I didn't bother because why would I? It's already hard enough. Yeah, I had to kill all these penguins because I needed to land on the platform and roll off of it. It took quite a while, but it was worth it. Thank God there's no line of bananas here. Like, it almost feels intentional with how barely this is possible. Like, you only get 3 items, you only get 3 balloons to work with, and yeah, there's just barely not enough banana lines to stop you. It's awesome. I was so happy when I figured out it was doable. And yeah, this actually is a pretty easy level without, or pretty hard level with Donkey Kong, like all the K stages are. But with Dixie, this is probably the easiest K stage, I would say, because you just have so much time to line yourself up on the enemies. That jump is absurd, and I got really lucky there. But yeah, that's it, and enjoy my very ridiculous reaction. Yeah, a little much. But there you go. Back to the video. The number of required bananas in Autumn Heights is 76, and 4 out of 10 levels were possible. Adding up the 58 bananas from the last episode, we have a grand total of 134 so far. I'm hoping to keep the number below 500 if I can help it, but I have no idea what the rest of the worlds have in store. Please leave a like and comment on this video if you enjoyed. It really helps spread my video around to more people. And be sure to subscribe too, since next time I'll be looking at the bright Savanah. Hope to see you there. Have a great day.